Hi guys, we're starting early and I'm so sorry. And I'm somewhat unprepared because my apartment complex is ripping what is it? The sides of the building off that like have like the I don't know what they're called. I don't know the word right now. They're ripping parts of the side of the building off and they just got to my side of the building right now. Like right before it starts. So I'm just starting early so we can kind of try to beat it, hopefully, maybe. So thank you everybody for coming. I didn't even finish putting my makeup on. I literally just got on. So I don't know who's here right now. Hi everyone and everyone that's watching. We're gonna sort of hopefully not go through this too quick. I'll wait for the algorithm to do its thing. Hi, Leo. Why no? We're like rushing today. Oh my God. It was supposed to start at 3, but we're starting early. So I'm going to wait just a minute. They're taking the porches off the side of the building. That's the word, the porches. And of course, the one right next to my window is the one that they're starting on at 3 o'clock. So we're going to do a little early. So I'll wait a few minutes. So today we're going to be looking at something very interesting in history. The Jewish refugees of Shanghai. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with that historical fact that up to 20,000 Jews took refuge in China during World War II to escape Nazi Germany and anti-Semitic feelings in Europe. I don't know how many of you guys are aware of that. So we're going to get started in just a minute. And what's really interesting about this is there are not a lot of documents and a lot of historical records. Oh, thanks, sire. I don't know how to pronounce that. Yeah, my sociology I need to brush up on. I try to use big words and I so that's about it. So, but yeah, I'm glad that I inspired you. So yeah, keep fighting. But hi free agent. So during the climax of anti-Semitism and the rise of the Nazi Party in the 1930s, the Jewish population of Europe and Germany were a little uneasy, to put it lightly. So they knew that it was time that they had to flee the country. But unfortunately, during that period, a majority of the Western countries and other surrounding countries closed their borders because they weren't only afraid that Hitler would follow, but they just didn't want any of the troubles, I feel like. So Shanghai was a unique opportunity for people to kind of get away, but it was a completely foreign land. It wasn't anywhere close to Europe. A lot of people weren't familiar with it, and a lot of people still aren't aware. And there's not a lot of like primary sources, documentation of the Jews being in Shanghai, but there's a lot of like personal stories and emotionally charged stories of that, and some pictures. So that's what we're going to show. Hi, Valley Girl. I was inspired because I had this pamphlet that I got from one of my friends who went to China. I was in Shanghai, but unfortunately was not able to go to the museum. So during the 1930s, the Jewish refugees from Europe started to head over to Shanghai. There was actually 3 different separate groups of people of Jewish descent that started heading over there. So there was the Sephardi Jews, who were from mostly Baghdad in the Middle East, and they ended up going in the southern district of Shanghai, and they played a huge role in the economy. They did a lot of real estate. They came with a lot of money. There was the Russian Jews who came in the early 20th century. They were escaping the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, as well as the Japanese invading Manchuria, which we talked a lot about during Unit 731, where actually a lot of Russian women, men, and children were used in those biological warfare experiments during that time. And then there was the European refugees who came during the 1930s. Most of them came during the late 1933. At the height of it in 1939, that's where a lot of them came in. And the reason that Shanghai was so appealing to the Jews to escape to is because it was one of the few countries that didn't require anything for, China as a country required certain things, but Shanghai was international like city. It had places that were owned by I think the United States, Britain, all that stuff. the Japanese. So there's a lot of stuff going on in there. So, but in order to get into Shanghai, you didn't need a passport, a visa, certificate of guarantee, any proof of like income or anything. You could just go. So this was like the one point, like the do or die decision. Do I wait in Germany for my families to get put in concentration camps, or do we move everyone to Shanghai? And during that period, a lot of Jews were getting their money taken away and their possessions, and they were only allowed to have a certain amount of money. So they were really pulling together all of their family resources to get to Shanghai. So this is the picture on the left. The left is a picture of the Bund in Shanghai, where I've actually visited there, and it's really interesting because there's a lot of obviously Chinese inspired architecture, but this whole little section right here is all very Western inspired. It's really interesting when you go there and you see like the polar opposites in this. And then the picture on the right is from the United States Holocaust Museum, and that shows the Jews arriving in Shanghai. So as I talked about, there was 3 different groups of Jews that lived in Shanghai primarily. And what was interesting, you think that the anti-Semitism would follow them to Shanghai, but the ideologies and the Jewish stereotypes actually is what saved them in China, which is really weird. And I'm going to explain a little bit about that, because the Chinese, like the Japanese and the Chinese, for instance, they heard of all of the stereotypes and the anti-Semitic ideologies that the Germans and other people in Europe were spreading, but they picked out certain points in it. So the Chinese thought to themselves, well, the Jews are wealthy, they're business focused, they're really politically active, they have this power. And the Japanese were like Jewish power economy, political affiliations. So they saw this as like a good thing. They didn't say this is something to be stigmatized. So they thought that having the Jews put in this little section of Shanghai would actually be beneficial to them, both politically and economically as well. And the Chinese, they were nice to them. They didn't really interact a lot, but then there's some stories where like the families ended up getting married and stuff. So it's very interesting. But the Jews formed very tight-knit communities. Now the European Jews went to the northern part of Shanghai, which I'll talk about later, which was called Hongkou. And then, like I said earlier, the Jews from the Middle East were more in the southern part of Shanghai. And they ended up, another thing that was very appealing to the Chinese people is that they had a really good sense of communal identity. And they also had a common enemy, which was the Japanese at the time. And as more as the Japanese started invading and doing stuff in Manchuria and started making their way over, and not to mention they were allies with Germany, it kind of put them at the same spot. And the Chinese actually were able to feel very relatable to the Jewish population, because they faced some of the same communal persecution. As you can see, the Japanese did a lot of war atrocities against the Chinese during World War II. So they kind of like felt like they had some type of relatable identity to each other. And like I said, the Japanese saw an opportunity. So in the picture on the top, I think this is the same street, maybe, I don't know. This is like some of the Jewish neighborhood back in the late 30s in Shanghai. And then this is the neighborhood today. So I have some interesting pictures I found of the Shanghai Jewish passports. There's not a lot of documentation that I said. A lot of these documents come from like personal family collections. And so I think it's fascinating that such a big chunk of history, like 18 to 20,000 people isn't a little group of people. That is generations of family that were literally saved from being wiped off the earth in that horrible genocide that took place. So a lot of the families arrived in China impoverished, except for the people that came from the Middle East. They had very little money, and they actually, the Russian Jews, not the Russian Jews, the Sephardi Jews from the Middle East actually helped play such a big role in the economy of Shanghai. They actually set up a community for assistance for the Jews that were coming from Europe. And I think I read that the United States might have helped a little bit, not so much. I think actually some of the Japanese actually helped resettle and put some money into this assistance fund as well. Like I said, it's kind of up in the air. There's not a lot of information out there. Um, and the information that there is still coming to light. Hold on one second. I'm looking at something. We're just going to skip that. So I have a quote down here that was from a girl that was living in Shanghai with the Chinese, and she said the Chinese were very nice and gentle people. They never bothered us. They didn't care that we were Westerners or Jewish. They left us alone. To a large extent, so did the Japanese who occupied Shanghai and also had respect for the Jews when we were living in their midst. Now, there was a point where the Germans started pushing back a little bit, that they started, like, checking paperwork, putting down a little bit more rules, but nothing compared to the type of persecution that the Jews were experiencing in Europe. So eventually, the Nazi Party ended up visiting China in the 1940s. And I have a piece from this. Let me look. I had notes and I lost it because I was trying to start too soon. Joseph, where was it? Sorry, excuse the break. I'm looking for something really important. Oh, there was a gentleman. I'm almost finding it. Okay. One second. Apologies. So, what was his name? Joseph? I've almost found it. Joseph Messenger. During the 1940s, I think it was 1941, visited Shanghai and China and was talking to Japanese officials like Shibata Mutsugu. And he was like, hey, you can kill these people. You need to put more rules down. We can help put this forward. And the Japanese actually put some rules in, but they actually said no, which really blew my mind away, because after looking at Unit 731, like, you can tell that the Japanese had they had complete disregard for other people's lives. So, but like I said, the fact is the Japanese thought that they could use stuff like their political influences and their the stereotypical the Jewish stereotypes to their advantage, like good with money and stuff like that, and bring that as a positive towards them and help them at the end of the war in building a new Japanese empire. So they wanted to keep them alive. But I had a quote here. So where was it? Joseph Messenger, who was known for killing thousands of Jews in Poland, visited Shanghai in the 1940s. He offered his assistance to helping do a genocide in Shanghai, but the Japanese military officials refused. And the Japanese kind of did spread some anti-Semitic propaganda and did some restrictions in the Jewish communities after that visit in the 1940s by putting up the Shanghai ghetto, which actually was super impoverished. There wasn't people were starving or anything, but people were on top of each other. Sanitary conditions weren't very good unless you came in with a lot of money, like the what was it, the Sephardi Jews. It was bad living conditions, but it was nothing to what they were living in Europe. So they moved all the Jews to that northern area in Hong Kong, and the Japanese authorities put increasing regulations on the Jews in that community overall. But the Japanese actually worked closely with Jewish relief organizations and Jewish leaders, and they donated money towards refugees, which I said earlier. And while the Japanese were criticized greatly for some of the actions they did against the Shanghai Jews, the Jewish community was treated decidedly better than the Chinese, which is no surprise because the Japanese just did not like the Chinese at all. And there was one quote in here that I thought that was very interesting. They were called the Japan dubbed the Jews the Hitler's gift from the East. So I thought that that was a very interesting name to give them. So Hitler's gift from the East. They really thought that they were going to get some financial benefit off of having them. So I don't know if they actually saved them out of the good of their hearts, or if they did because of like selfish, egotistical reasons. But the Jews did start building families there. Some got married. They ended up establishing the Shanghai Jewish Chronicle in 1939. But it was really in the 40s that, like I said, the Japan started getting more involved in Shanghai, and they took over the international settlements and stuff, that things began to change, and especially after the bombing. So this is a picture I took for my book because I didn't want to like show my book like on screen, like because it's kind of hard. But I'm going to continue reading from what I was. What was I going to say? So one of the biggest quotes that I read in one of the papers I was reading, that despite increasing Nazis' desire to commit violence against Shanghai Jews in the 1940s, the Japanese control over Shanghai protected the Jewish community by claiming that only they had authority to deal with the Jewish situation. So if it literally was not for the Japanese intervention and claiming stake in the Jewish communities in Shanghai and taking over those international communities, literally up to 20,000 Jews would have been put up to slaughter for the continuing German genocide of people of Jewish descent. So it takes a lot of guts, I think, to stand up to Hitler and the Nazi army. So I don't know if anybody's finding this interesting so far. I'm eventually going to make a video off of this where it's like scripted and it's more in line. Like I said, I apologize. It's a little rushed today because we started earlier because they're doing construction on my apartment building. So, I'm just kind of reading from some stuff earlier. So right here, this is from this book here. It has some like stories of families that were born in Shanghai. And you can see they don't seem like they're very impoverished, but like there were certain areas of Shanghai that had more well-to-do families than not. And right here, I'm going to try to find the page. Is a girl named Ellen Cham Krakow, who was born on March 12, 1947 in Shanghai. Her parents were Jewish refugees who fled from Germany. And in 1949, the family left Shanghai for Israel. After America bombed, after Japan really brought America into the war through Pearl Harbor and everything started to go to hell, the Jews really started fleeing other countries, especially after Germany and Japan were overthrown. They started going to like America, other countries like that. So they left in 1949. And so this is pictures of her family. This one was very interesting. Romance in Shanghai. This was Robert Riven Sokol and Chen Chu Yang. And Robert Ravun Sokol took refuge in Shanghai from 1939 to 1948. He won a scholarship and was able to major in biology at a college in Shanghai. And in 1945, he met Julie Chen Chu Yang in campus, and they fell in love. And 1948, they ended up moving to Chicago, and they got married and studying there. And then this is his in the corner, that's his wife. So there was very unlikely marriages that came. And this is another story about a beauty queen that took refuge in Shanghai from 1937 to 1948. So this little book I have here has tons of little stories of interesting people and families that came over or that shared their records with the world. And there's so I thought that was very fascinating. But did anybody have any idea of any of this? I had no idea, and I thought that was very fascinating. So let me see. So during 1949 to 1956, the Jewish population in Shanghai basically went down. And today there's probably about 1,500 to 2,000 Jewish people still residing in Shanghai. That was as of 2013. This is pictures of the museum. And it's one of the most proud moments in Chinese history, I think, that they did this. I don't think really a lot of people really like mentioned the Japanese, because the Japanese sort of messed up and doing all those war atrocities. But I really want to visit the museum someday. I have like this pamphlet that has a lot of pictures of like all of the stuff that's in there. I might scan this and actually put this on my website because it has like all pictures of like stuff that I couldn't scan and like little explanations, stuff that you can't find on the internet because this is actually from Shanghai. So I thought that would be very interesting to share with everyone. I know, but like you have to think like there was entire families that were wiped out during the Holocaust. And like since I was little, since my family came from Germany, this was like the Holocaust and Nazis and Hitler was something that my grandmother really educated on me when I was growing up. And she had no idea. My aunt had no idea about this, and I'm sure she didn't either. And it's just like that. I'm not sure. I think look with religion in China, it's interesting because anything that the Chinese government can't control is not allowed. So Catholicism is allowed in China because whatever religious heads that they have that oversee the Catholic Church, the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party picks. Now, I don't know how things work in Judaism, but I think that since they had such a tight-knit community and sort of helped each other during that time, that they have a little bit more leeway. But like stuff like Christianity is driven into underground churches and people are killed for being Christian in China. So I know that there's not very many people there left, but I think that they're allowed to freely do stuff because, you know, it's not like Jehovah's Witnesses. People of Jewish people aren't just going out recruiting people to join the religion. It's very like stays right within. So it's not like a lot of intermingling and have to worry about conversions. And I think spreading the word about somebody that's like God that's going to do this and that is something that takes away from one leader, one ideal kind of thing in China with communism. And you really don't have the threat of that with Judaism. So I think that's like a really big factor in why Jewish people are allowed to practice their religion in China with a few groups that are left. At least that makes sense to me. So I actually found some interesting video. We're going to play a little bit. They had some interviews. So I want you guys to push one in the chat if you can hear it. And I'm going to stop it periodically so it doesn't get like Tom Cruise is nuts. Keep him in his Scientology is a big threat, I would assume. So let me know if you can hear it when I start it. I think I messed this up. Let me just watch this on YouTube. Hold on. I was watching this earlier, so that's probably why. Let me fix this real quick. So you're not going to be able to hear anything yet. Share audio, window, Chrome tab. Share.
On April 1st, 2015, there was a wedding in Shanghai at the Jewish Refugee Museum. The Jewish groom Doran and his Chinese bride Deng Yina joined in marriage and in the blessing of their relatives.
Chinese people of Shanghai that saved so many Jewish people during the Second World War. It's a very significant place, a very amazing place, and we're so thankful to the Chinese people for what they have done.
The Shanghai Jewish Refugees Museum was originally the Old Moshe Synagogue, built in 1927. When thousands of Jewish refugees fleeing the Holocaust arrived in Shanghai, the synagogue became their religious home. On the second floor of the museum, there is a wedding photo. Though a wedding held during troubled times could only bring little comfort, the young Jewish bride in the picture smiles out happily from the past. Her name is Betty. She escaped from Berlin to Shanghai in 1939. We found Betty in the U.S. in Atlantic County, New Jersey. She is 85 now, and probably because she grew up in Shanghai, Betty has always loved Chinese food.
Which one? This one? Zhangyu. Okay.
Most American families might expect ketchup on the table, but Betty looks for the bottle of soy sauce. Steamed buns and Chinese dumplings, just like in Shanghai.
From Hong Kong. This is Shangyu? Shangyu?
Yeah, Jiangyu.
Okay. 谢谢.
Betty left Shanghai almost 70 years ago, but her life still bears the imprint of China.
This is my jacket. I bought this 65 years ago when I left China in 1950. And it's been with me in all the different countries that I've lived in. It's a very special piece for me. If I hadn't gotten to Shanghai, I would not be here today because Shanghai, China altogether, was the loophole that allowed about 20,000 Jewish people from Europe to find a haven. And there was no other place where we could go at that time.
Betty was born in Berlin, Germany in 1930. In the year of 1933, Hitler came to power. He gradually escalated persecution of the Jews by prohibiting them from working, depriving them of German citizenship, confiscating their assets, and finally, the genocide. These are Betty's childhood memories.
I could not walk on the street without being pushed around by children who were not Jewish, who belonged to the Hitler Youth, and having stones thrown at us and being spit upon. It was getting to be very dangerous.
When she was little, Betty had red hair and a pair of brown eyes. These made her easily recognizable as a Jew. This is the Berlin Grunewald station. In the Second World War, many Jewish refugees were transported to concentration camps from here. In April 1939, having found the fourth ticket, the Blumenthal family took a train from here to leave for Naples, Italy. A ship bound for Shanghai was waiting for them there.
This is on the ship. This is me on the ship when I was 9 years old.
This album is a record of the most important things that have happened in Betty's life.
And this is the ticket that my father spent all this money on to get the ticket to Shanghai, yes.
This is the ticket Betty used in 1939 to leave for Shanghai. Desperate, Betty's father heard that a Chinese city called Shanghai was willing to receive Jewish refugees. Though the family knew nothing about Shanghai, still, it was a better choice than waiting for death in Germany. They immediately started their attempts to find out how to buy tickets for Shanghai.
It was probably at least 500 marks at that time, and that was a lot of money. But in order to get on a ship, you had to have tickets. So without that bribe, I'm sure that I would not be where I am today.
At the time, Italian and Japanese companies monopolized shipping routes from Europe to Shanghai. Knowing perfectly well that Jews could not travel back to Europe, these war profiteers still required Jews to buy round-trip tickets. Jewish people had no choice, and they had to pay bribes as well.
He gave it to this shipping officer, and he put it in the papers. And he said, please look at my papers again. And when this guy saw all the money, then a few days later, we had tickets. And we managed, with all those bribes that he paid the shipping company to get tickets earlier, we managed to get out 2 days before that. If he had not done that, I would not be here today.
On May 21st, 1939, the day for non-German nationals to renew their residence permits, Betty's father didn't show up at the Gestapo's police station. Instead, the whole family boarded a ship from Naples, Italy, to a place at the other end of the world, Shanghai, a city of which they knew nothing.
We didn't choose it. That was the only place we could go. It was the only thing left for us to do.
The Xunhua newspaper for February 22, 1939, reported the arrival of Jewish refugees in Shanghai. The Italian ship arrived in Shanghai this morning, bringing in 841 Jewish refugees. The relief organization has prepared shelters in Huashan Road, Huishan Road, and in the Embankment Building for them to live in. After that, shiploads of Jewish refugees came to Shanghai, one after another. They were almost penniless when they arrived. At the time they left Germany, the Nazis allowed each family to bring only 10 marks with them. Other than clothes and some daily necessities, any valuables, gold, silver, or jewelry, had to be left behind.
My mother and my grandmother. That was my maiden name.
85-year-old Evelyn found her parents' names and her own on the memorial wall at the Shanghai Jewish Refugees Museum. The wall lists the names of 13,732 Jewish refugees who settled in Shanghai after escaping from Nazi Germany.
So I think that's fascinating. No, it's okay, James. We started early because they're doing construction outside my building. So that just blew my mind. Sorry, I like cry when I watch stuff like that. I'm so emotional. It's just I've had to watch so much things on the Holocaust because of my grandmother. I just get really teary-eyed every time. I know the one humane thing that the Chinese government did, and they built a museum so everybody knows about it. It's like the only humane thing they've done pretty much since then. Yeah, I think it's like I said, Susan, earlier. I mentioned that they had like a common enemy, and they had like a very strong communal identity, and like the Chinese did, and they were both groups of people that were used to being persecuted upon. So I think that, like, what's the point of creating more hate and division? Like they kind of found out they were fighting with the same team. They were really separated, but a lot of the more personal, like primary sources and documents from survivors says that they mingled, but like historians say that they were rather separated. Yeah, so I don't know. I always like cry when I watch stuff like this. I like still blows my mind that humanity can be so evil. Like I can't. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they got some money. BKKD. I don't know. I just like I can't believe that the human race can be so evil and so vile sometimes. Like I was made to watch Schindler's List like when I was in elementary school. So like I was exposed to like this whole dark side of humanity at a very young age. So yeah. There's a worse movie than Schindler's List out there I found, and it was such a terrible accurate reenactment that I could not watch it. Like my daughter's 9, she's probably watched Schindler's List when she was 6. Just because I was telling her a little bit about her heritage, and I like to tell her, like, you know, this happened. This is not how we treat people. This is what happened when you don't stand up for other people. Like that kind of lessons. Oh God, who's ever seen the movie Schindler's List? Put one in the chat. I think the one movie that I watched was actually from a German director. It was some director in Europe for sure. It wasn't somebody from Hollywood, but Schindler's List was like, man, that movie, the girl in the red coat scene, that one really got me. I just cannot imagine. So, yeah, it's like insane. So it's hard to grasp some things that have happened, but it's important that we're aware because, like I said before, when we talk about like the genocide, the mass genocide, I'm going to call it genocide that's happening of the Uyghur population in Xinjiang, China. Like you would think after something like the Holocaust. And there's even like mass genocides. Like I don't know if you heard about the genocide in Rwanda between, I think, like the Houthis and the Tutsis, I think the groups. I actually met the man that saved some of the people from that genocide. I don't know if you guys have actually seen the movie Hotel Rwanda. Oh, let me see. Let me see. Has anybody heard of Hotel Rwanda, the movie? Oh, let me see. I forgot a lot of the details of what it's about. Like I've seen the movie, like I remember the movie, but I don't remember any of like the actual historical details. But it's another genocide that happened in, I believe, Africa. Oh God, my skills are coming out. My research skills are coming out. Not this shows how much I suck. It was about a gentleman named Paul Rusesabagina, who saved a whole bunch of people from genocide in Rwanda. Let me see. I'm trying to get some details. He was the manager of a Hotel des Mille Collines in Kigali during the Rwanda genocide of 94. And there was divisions and war between two main ethnic groups. And they, I think it was the Hutu ethnic majority launched a systematic campaign with the Hutu militias to wipe out the Tutsi ethnic minority, and they slaughtered more than 800,000 people over the course of 100 days, and nobody stepped in. The United Nations did not step in sooner, and this gentleman, Paul Rusesabagina, saved a whole bunch of people by storing them in his hotel, and it was a very interesting movie, and I actually met Paul Rusesabagina in 2005 at a talk. So that's a very interesting. I could cover that. I'm like so surprised that I was in college. I didn't appreciate the fact that I met this person. I was just like blah blah blah. So I really regret not like appreciating that more, getting an autograph. But like genocides happen all the time, and nobody's aware of them, and nobody like pays attention. But you think after the Holocaust, people would be a little bit more empathetic and really stand up for other groups of people. Yeah, I like. I wonder if I could show. Let me see if I could show a trailer. Well, actually, let's go into the after chat, because if my video gets taken down for showing a trailer, I would rather it be the after chat. So then we could talk about other things and not jam this up. And then I got announcements of some other things I'm doing. So if you guys head into this YouTube video, let's head into there. And that's going to be the after chat. And then we could talk a little bit about that. So I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Sorry it was a little bit rushed. I had to start early because they're doing construction on my building. And now look, it's 3:30 and they still haven't started. That's called Murphy's Law. So I didn't even finish doing my makeup. And it's just a lot of stuff that's going on today. So let's head over to the after chat, which I just plugged, and we'll just talk there. So I will see you guys in a little bit.